As some of you know, Nevada has regulations on what carcass parts from your harvest you can bring back into the state. This is to prevent the introduction of chronic wasting disease, or CWD. Today we're going to show you how to prepare your European mount in the field in order to safely bring back into the state. You can see our other video for how to skull cap an animal and prepare that for bringing back into the state. So when we start with a head from your harvest, you're going to need to take off all the tissue and then take the brain material out. The most important parts to remove to prevent the CWD are any nervous tissue, including the brain and the connected nerves, as well as any lymph nodes, as these are the areas where CWD prions concentrate the most. So we'll start with skinning the animal out and removing most of the tissue. So the first easiest step is to go ahead and remove any neck tissue that you have, all the way down to where the neck meets the skull. This is also how you'd access if you wanted to take a CWD sample. So if you go through a check station in some states like Colorado, you can ask them to remove the neck for you. Once that's free, you can go ahead and remove the cape. When removing the tissue, you want to make sure you get most of the muscle off, as well as take out any nerves that are attached and remove the eyes. Work around the base of the antlers to remove the cape. Cut along the inside of the jaw to detach the tongue and to remove it. You want to make sure that you remove lymph nodes like that, because that's where CWD can concentrate. So we're going to show you next how to remove the eye. It can be helpful to have something to grab onto it, something like a Leatherman, and then you have a smaller blade like a Havalon. You're going to just want to cut around the outside of the eyeball, trying not to puncture it, which will make your work harder. And then you're going to work your way behind it to sever the optic nerve. You can then take your forceps and cut out the rest of the smaller tissue that remains in there. Once the tissue is loosened up, you can pry the jaw out, cutting away any final connections that may be present. Once you've had time to clean all the tissue off, you want to end up something like this. Most of the tissue is off. There's a little bit of muscle and connective tissue left. The next step will now be to remove the brain. When you go to remove the brain, there's a couple different ways this can be accomplished. One is the bottle scrubber or a bent coat hanger that can help you extract the brain. What we found is very useful is the Raptor Razor Scrambler. It attaches to any regular drill and uses weed eater cord to scramble the brain. For a deer this size, you'd want to use just the first set of holes. But for a bigger animal, and even for an elk, then you can use the entire thing. It's even long enough to be used on moose. Add water as you work. use water to flush the brain material out of the calvarium, or out of the brain case. Continue this process until that you can see with a light that there's no brain material left within the brain case. So once you've gotten all the brain material out and you've gotten the majority of the tissue off the skull, you're ready to take your animal back into state. You want to make sure that there's no nerves attached, there's no lymph nodes, and the majority of the muscle and the other tissue has been removed. If, when you get home, you're going to remove any additional tissue, it's important that that tissue does not end up on the landscape, and any scraps, whether it's from cleaning your head or butchering your meat, go in a garbage bag, in your municipal waste, and not be put on the landscape. Now that you've removed most of the tissue from the outside, as well as the brain material from the inside, you're ready for the final step, which is to boil it to remove the last bits of nerves and tissue that are still attached to the skull. To boil, a burner like this, propane, and some sort of container, it doesn't have to be this big, is really all you need. To the water, you're going to want to add about a cup or so of salt, depending on how much water you have, and that'll depend on the size of skull you have, and about a cup or so of what's called soda ash. And these, as they boil, will help loosen the tissue from the skull, and it'll come off nice and easy when you're done. You're going to need to boil a skull of this size for about an hour or so. So once your water is starting to boil, you can go ahead and put the skull into the water, trying to keep most of the antlers out of the water. So after it's been about 20 minutes, go ahead and pull it out, and we'll see how we're doing as far as being able to get some more tissue off. And you kind of just got to use whatever tools seem to work the best, scrapers, things like that. Just follow the procedures we've outlined here in these videos, whether it's a European mount or whether you're skull capping an animal for a traditional mount. Follow those and you'll be on the right side of the law, and you'll be helping to keep Nevada CWD free.